Honourable member for Morris.
Sure. The Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative is a collection of highly qualified people within a cross-Canada network of partners dedicated to wildlife health, including internationally renowned wildlife researchers, experts in population control, skilled educators, and policy advisors. The Manitoba government had been supporting this work for a number of years through a modest annual grant of $10,000. Mr. Speaker, can the minister advise why Manitoba is now the only jurisdiction in Canada not contributing to the CWHC? Are the province's finances so shaky?
The Honourable Minister of Conservation.
Well, I want to thank the member opposite for the question. Of course, wildlife populations are very important to me personally as a rural Manitoban and to our party on this side of the House here. Wildlife is an extension of our environment, Mr. Speaker, and a government that dedicates funds toward the environment is a government that cares on all fronts. Members opposite, of course, their recent conversion of the member opposite to environmental issues is very heartening to see. However, I make note that at their last policy convention, Mr. Speaker, not a single resolution, not one resolution over the entire weekend on the topic of the environment was discussed by them. We have no lessons to learn from members opposite when it comes to maintenance of the environment.
Order, please. The minister's time this question has elapsed. Honourable member for Morris.
The CWHC has identified cases of blue tongue, avian botulism, and bat rabies in jurisdictions which border our province, including Ontario and Saskatchewan. The minister, indeed this government's attitude towards conservation has been to cut, and cut, to the tune of $20 million since 2011. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister of Cuts explain how his non-support of the CWHC supports his government's goals of detecting and assessing wildlife health issues?
The Honourable Minister of Conservation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's amazing to hear about cuts from members opposite. Their leader would cut $500 million out of the budget. Imagine the impact that would have on budgets across all departments of government. Look at Lake Winnipeg as a classic example, Mr. Speaker. Our government recently announced $100 million additional dollars to put toward wastewater treatment at the North End plant in Winnipeg to take care of the needs of Lake Winnipeg. What would members opposite do in that regard? They referred to that as a waste of money, Mr. Speaker. That shows how dedicated they are to the maintenance of our lakes and streams in this province. So, once again, no lessons to learn from members opposite. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Morris.
Mr. Speaker, the minister's staff are at a loss. The CWHC is at a loss. Most days, the minister's at a loss. This minister's inability to stand up for his own department threatens Manitobans' ability to identify emerging wildlife health issues. The minister says budgets are complicated. How could he find $670,000 for political payouts to pay for his internal rebellion, but he can't find 1/60th of that amount to support some of the most pressing wildlife issues facing Manitoba and Canada? Whose priorities are these ministers fronting, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable Minister of Conservation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the next thing you know, members opposite are going to be rising up and declaring their support for David Suzuki's Blue Dot Declaration. I'm waiting with open arms for that conversion on the road to Damascus toward the care of our environment, Mr. Speaker. So, on this side of the House, we have concerns for our environment. We care about climate change. Climate change to members opposite is still a myth. And when you want to talk about climate change, the position of the Liberals is no better. When they recently announced that addressing flood mitigation around Lake Manitoba and Lake St. Martin, that was not a high priority to them, Mr. Speaker, that's disgraceful. The Liberal Party should apologize to rural and Aboriginal people in Manitoba for their lack of care for flood mitigation. Thank you, Mr.
Honourable Minister's time. This question has elapsed.